Continuing on, we are still in Unit 5. This will be Lesson 24, looking at a key event, and we're going to be talking about Ruth in this lesson. So once again, your bonus word, so your fourth bonus word for the quiz is unimpressed. Unimpressed. To use that in a sentence, I am unimpressed with Grant's attempts to be funny. Seriously, man, you're not funny. So I'm unimpressed. All right. So we're picking up with talking about Ruth, and so this should be the shortest video of the series because once again, we all know the story of Ruth. We're not going to spend a lot of time on it, but a couple of things. Remember, it's interesting to me how from the very beginning we see that even though Israel was supposed to be God's chosen people, they were supposed to be the ones who were eyewitnesses of God's power, His majesty. They were supposed to be the ones who were following Him. The Bible makes it very clear that faith was not found only in Israel. Already in Joshua and also in Judges, because Ruth occurs during Judges, during these two time periods, there are two specific women who are called out for having incredible faith. Of course, the first one is Rahab, Joshua chapter 2, verse 10. Rahab showed more faith from stories than the Israelites did who actually saw the events. I think it's interesting that Rahab mentions them crossing the Red Sea, the plagues done in Egypt. Now remember, this would have had to have at least been 40 years since this occurred. 40 years later, Rahab and the people, Rahab may not have even been born then. We don't know for certain, but she had more faith hearing stories about what God had done for the people than the people who actually saw it. Let that sink in just for a moment. Rahab showed her faith by believing the stories more than the people who actually saw the events happen. And of course, Ruth. Ruth had more faith to follow God than Israel did during the time of the judges. Remember, Elimelech and his family fled from Israel because there was a famine in the land. There was a famine in the land because of their disobedience, because of what they refused to obey God. And so this was God trying to oppress them to get them to turn back to him. When Naomi returns after Elimelech and Chalon and Malion die, Ruth returns. She leaves her home, she leaves her family, she's going to a place that she has no really relatives there other than Naomi, and yet she shows more faith in trusting God than Israel did. Even Elimelech and his family, more faith than they showed. So think about that just for a moment. Of course, we remember how Naomi returns to Bethlehem after her husband and sons die. She tries to get Orpah. She tries to get both of them returned home. Orpah does return home, but Ruth gives her impassioned speech, "Wherever you go, I will follow." So she promises that she is not going to leave Naomi. We know the story about how Ruth goes and gleans from the fields of Boaz. Boaz takes note of her, and finally, Boaz makes sure that she's taken care of. Uh, Naomi kind of hatches a plot to get Boaz to basically propose to her. And so Boaz does that, but only after he makes sure that a closer relative wouldn't redeem her. And of course, the relative says, "I'm not going to do that." So Boaz gets to receive Ruth as a wife. And so, because of their faith, both Rahab and Ruth are in the lineage of Christ. Two women, two Gentiles, show more faith than Israel does, and so because of that, they're rewarded with a place in the lineage of Christ. All right, we'll pick it up in just a few minutes with lesson 25, and then we'll be done for Unit 5.